This episode is brought to you by Monogram. Welcome to the Design Dash podcast, your guide to designing a life you love. Join us as we explore the keys to living the life you want without compromise.
Welcome back to the Design Dash podcast. Today we are excited to welcome Kara Duffy, a business strategist who transforms entrepreneurial dreams into reality. So she is speaking our language. Kara has been a powerhouse in international business, from starting her first venture at 9 years old, which we will talk about because that's a little crazy, to leading product and strategy for global brands. And you can also catch her Powerful Ladies podcast for inspiring stories of innovation and success. Kara teaches business owners how to increase revenue and impact while reducing stress and work hours, covering everything from financials to team building. Her tools and insights are designed to streamline your business operations and enhance your productivity. And it sounds like working less hours, so that sounds amazing. She's truly talking to all of us at Design Dash. So we're really thrilled to have you here, Kara, and happy to have you share your wisdom on achieving a thriving and balanced business. So thanks for being here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, you launched your first business at 9 years old. So talk about that. Like, what in the world? And also since that time, personal or professional milestones or challenges that you've seen happen for you.
Sure. So, when I was 9, I was deep into reading Babysitter's Club and Nancy Drew and loving the Gem of the Holograms cartoon. And I didn't realize this until a couple of years ago, but all of the powerful, girls and women I was being inspired by, one, they were fictional at the time. And two, they all had businesses and jobs and adventures that in hindsight, I'm like, how old were they doing this? But as a 9-year-old, I'm like, oh, if they can, I can totally do this too.
Of course.
I started babysitting when I was 9. This was the 80s, so it made sense back then. I also took over my parents' backyard to host a summer camp for our whole neighborhood. And I just didn't think it was weird. I thought I'm such a project-oriented person, and it's so easy for a project to suddenly spark into a business. So that's kind of how things started at 9. You asked about some major milestones.
Yeah. So I mean, really, that's a broad question. So I guess more was there a certain pivot point or milestone in your life and career that led you to coaching entrepreneurial women?
Yes. So I've had quite a few pivot points in my life, and I've got my MBA in entrepreneurship, thought I would never work for somebody else. And then I also had this passion for design, thought I would be a fashion designer. And I ended up working in footwear and apparel for 20 years. And I got to be entrepreneurial because I was creating new products, new brands, opening new markets. So it really satisfied the entrepreneurial component of what drives me. I also got to travel the world and have fun. Like, it meant a lot of what I call the 4 corners, the 4 things you must have to really be satisfied in the work you're doing. And I was great at that. I was having a great time. I was living abroad, but I was getting bored. And it was because you can only have so many, at least for me, I could only have so many meetings about what is the new pink or the new blue before I wanted to rip my hair out and say, I think we can be having bigger conversations. I was also struggling with the consumption rate of like how much stuff we as big brands were producing and not having a plan for where it was going. So I started going to some personal development conferences and weekends, and I was in a Sunday afternoon for one of them, and everybody in the room was all lit up about saving the whales and foster kids and whatever their passion project was. But they were freaking out because they had no idea how to make it a reality. And that's when I had my light bulb moment going, that's the easy part.
Right.
Whatever you want to make happen, we can do. Like, there's a roadmap for almost everything. And if not, we can make it up. And so I started coaching nonprofits on the side. And that's where the coaching world kind of opened up to me. I'd always been a mentor and in leadership roles. But I didn't realize I had this secret formula that most of the world didn't have, because my little insular community, it was, of course, common sense to us.
Hmm. So your superpower is taking that seed of an idea and really fleshing it out and creating a pathway for someone else to achieve it.
Yeah, I like to say that I mix the soul with the structure. When you are working, especially I work with a lot of creative entrepreneurs, and there's always this dynamic of scarcity of like, who's going to pay us to do the thing that we love? But also, when you're creative, you don't want to hang out in spreadsheets. You don't want to hang out in operations. And so I really think of it as like an infinity symbol of how can we make sure that businesses are built around you and for you so that it's sustainable and exciting for you, while also maintaining the basic things that you need to make it a business and not a hobby.
Hmm.
Very cool. And so you had mentioned that you
Melissa had a good point early on that I want her to jump in on this.
Oh, well, I was actually going to ask a different question first, because you had talked about your footwear background and being in these big corporations. And I often wonder, like sometimes as a small business, kind of wonder like, okay, well, what else is out there? Like, or what can we take from like those big corporations? Like you worked with Nike and Saucony, which I love, and Reebok and these big brands. Like what can small business owners learn from the big guys?
Well, I think that there's so much efficiency. So when I was working at Puma, it's a German-based brand. I was working in Germany, and you really see the masters of German efficiencies. And what I loved about Puma in particular is that they really focused on having small teams set up the operational components so that it didn't lopside the company, right? Like as a creative, we want to make sure that at least 50% of our time is spent in the creative space, if not more.
Mm.
And sometimes when we are a small business, we build a prison of our own making because we don't know all the businessy things. We know the design, we know the marketing, whatever your thing is, you know that. But all this gray area of like, I know businesses do these other things, but I have no idea what it is or how to start. We end up overcompensating in the operations structure side and forgetting that we can find a lot of efficiencies there. One of my favorite phrases is to automate, delegate, or delete. And often when I'm working with, especially a creative entrepreneur, we can cut out 80% of what's actually in their to-do list or part of their business because there's a lot of extra steps that really bog things down and aren't fun or efficient. And it gives everyone room to like really focus on what are those SOPs? How do we automate some standard things? In interior design world, you know that you have recurring checklists when you go in, review a space, when you onboard a client, you have the same questions you're asking over and over again. They don't all apply to every client. But if we can systematize even that thought process for you into a checklist, one, it allows people to support you in a more powerful way. But two, you don't have to reuse your creativity for like, oh, wait, how do we do this project again? How do we run this business again? You save all your brain power for the real fun stuff, but also the big challenges that need your brain power too.
Yeah. Do you find that working with creative entrepreneurs, when you talk about systems and process, that like you kind of see a shutdown and people are like, that's not for me?
I definitely, I am very proud of how many people I convert into loving spreadsheets and loving to look at their numbers. Most creative entrepreneurs, you show them a spreadsheet, their eyes roll back in their head. You want to talk about making a checklist. They're like, oh, that sounds awful. But I think from being someone who is really 50-50 analytical creative, when I was working for those companies, I was often an ambassador, briefing designers, making sure it happened. Like I would go between the board members and the creatives. And so I think I have a unique space of translating it down to like, here's what actually matters. Like, I hate when people do things they don't need to do. I hate wasting my time. I think it's so silly. So showing someone how a spreadsheet or an operational component can be automated, can make sense, can give them power back. That's where I think some of the shifts start to happen because we don't want to roll in a bunch of operations for no reason. They really should be to simplify your life, not to add more stuff.
Hmm. Can you give us an example of one thing a creative entrepreneur or interior design business owner should implement immediately? Like, what is one thing that has to happen?
A networking tracking sheet. You meet and know so many vendors, people. What we are not doing as small business owners in general, and definitely not in the interior design space, is tracking all the people we know and how we can actually use them in our business. The people we know are our biggest resource. And often we've heard the phrase, it's all about who you know. And it's like, no, it's about who knows you,
Hmm.
because you want people to think of you. You want people to remember what you do. And so by having a spreadsheet where you're tracking, like, okay, I met this vendor for coffee. Oh, I met this new realtor for this and that, and really tracking them and managing those relationships, it's amazing how quickly you start getting these what feel like magical calls
Hmm.
because you're staying top of mind of people. But we're meeting people all the time, but we're not capturing them anywhere. So we can be like, oh, yeah, I loved meeting that person at that dinner party. I don't know if they're going to be business relevant for me, but I like them. There's something I find attractive about their energy. They could become a client, they could become a referral, they could be, we don't know what these people's secret other lives are. And it turns out, oh, their sister's the biggest, developer in Aspen. You're like, oh, well, I'm glad I called you back. So that's one thing that can completely transform a service-based business if we don't let those connections that we find just kind of go back into the atmosphere.
That's great advice, because I feel like a lot of times as a small business owner, you're just go, 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 go. You may meet
Yes.
someone and then that is done and over and you are on to the next just because you have to be. Um, and in our business now, I feel like because we have a good sized team, we do have a relationship system, and like we are keeping up with those things. Not to that extent though. So that's interesting. I mean, not every touch point for sure, but what system would you use? Is this just like an Excel spreadsheet? Like just keep it simple?
I think for people just starting out, keep it simple. I use Monday.com for
What we
both
use too.
okay, perfect. I use it for my CRM. I use it for all my pipelines, my to-do
Yeah.
list with my team, like everything is in there. So knowing that you guys have Monday, once someone has that kind of networking pipeline put in, I think you also need, of course, a sales pipeline, which you can
Yep.
build in Monday. And then the next thing that I want every creative person to do is really just start making an outline of your process.
Mhm.
There's so much, like, every time a new project comes on board, I see so many people, especially interior designers, being like, okay, let's start the whole process again. How
Yep.
do I interior design? I forgot from last week. And it's like, that's so unnecessary, because the secret to building out your processes is it becomes an accordion. You can stretch it out and have all the details, or you can collapse it and just see the key touch points. But those key touch points allow you to see where you could break up phases, where you can break up payment plans, where you might have a secret course or workshop or book, that it opens up your entire product process to become other things. And I think that's one of the biggest secrets that people can start doing. Just start writing it down, or even audio messaging yourself as you're thinking about it. It doesn't have to be written. If we get stuck in, I hate writing things down, okay, go text it to yourself, or have your assistant capture it, because often the people on your team know all the steps more than you do because they're so obvious to you. You forget steps 1 through 5.
Yep.
But that's really powerful for all creatives.
Well, good to have some alternatives too, because I know that there are the people in our firm who they're not writing it down, like they can keep it up in their head, like, or maybe they're very anti-process. I'm very pro-process, but again, I'm not a designer, so I can bring that part in there. But you did mention networking tracking being so important. We talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who love the networking, they love the business development, but we've also talked to some who don't, or maybe they do, but it's so draining. Like
Yes.
they're introverts naturally, like they love closing the business, they love doing beautiful design for their clients, but meeting them and networking and closing is really stressful. Like, is that, I don't know, like, it is, do we ever get over that? I say that because that's me, so that's why I'm asking.
Well, so I'll start by asking, like, who are your dream clients? Who are people that if you had the chance to work with them, you would just be so excited?
Oh, I mean, like me personally, oh gosh, I mean, I'd love to. Like, I
Sure.
love our. I mean, I can think about some of like our top clients right now that I've just absolutely loved, and the
Hmm.
way that like they met us, it was a personal connection. Again, it was a personal connection. It was that
Yep.
networking, like through a magazine or through social, which is
Hmm.
still such a challenge to try and be vulnerable and be authentic through social media. But that is how those connections have been made.
You know, I really am pro making networking fun. I only want to work with dream clients, and for me a dream client is someone whose life I can transform, but also would love to go on vacation with.
Yes.
Hmm.
And that sounds like an impossible
Right.
ask to most people, and I promise it is not. Now, is every client I've ever worked with somebody that I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's go on vacation. Can't wait." No, of course not. But like this is what we're curating. Like this is the table we want to be setting. And I think we think of networking as, at least I do, and this is why I did not want to go get my MBA, because I think business people like, ugh, suits, boring. They talk about nothing, awful. I want to hang out with the creatives. No, thank you. But the truth is, networking can be whatever you want it to be. I like creating my own networking opportunities where I invite the people who are on my wish list to come to an art show, a museum event, come for a curated special dinner I want to host because I love all those things anyway. My in my have it all methodology, I'm always looking at Venn diagrams of things. So, how can we do all the fun things that you like doing, bring all the people that you like that are going to share that too, and then just have like an focus on making friends more than making the deal.
Hmm.
I have an ebook, Stop Selling, Start Sharing, because that is like the way that we should be taking it. Like business is like dating. You cannot walk up to a stranger and say, "You're so attractive, let's get married." Just like you can't say, "I love your house. Can I please redo it?" It's weird. It's weird. Now, do those things work? Sure, one in like 100,000 times, something crazy like that could happen. But usually we have to like get to know someone both to make sure that we even want to work with them. We're so quick to pitch our business to anyone we think might be able to pay for us. And it's like, no, we need to protect that more. We need to make sure that our clients know that if you get into the past the velvet rope, like you're really a VIP, because I'm willing to bet you guys give way more than you're supposed to based on your scope of work. And I want you to have some freedom in being like, no, I'm going to love on you in such a big and deep way, but I want to make sure that you're worth getting all of that attention from us and our team. And I think we need to be a little bit more selective about who comes in and having fun networking events that are more real, more friendship oriented. It takes all that networking grossness out of it, but also really make sure you see like, no, these are the people who I want to be surrounding myself with and making an impact for.
We'd like to thank our good friends at Monogram Appliances. We've partnered with Monogram for over a decade with our design firm, Laura U Design Collective, and we're so happy to partner with them in producing the Design Dash podcast. Monogram sources the highest quality materials for their appliances, from commercial grade stainless steel to unscratchable sapphire glass. Monogram ensures lasting beauty and unmatchable quality for your luxury kitchen. And not only that, but they have an amazing team who we love working with, and we know you will too. So thanks, Monogram.
We talk about that quite a bit, actually. Like what you just said made me think of the fact that they're not just interviewing us. And I say interviewing, we are talking about networking and friendship. But when it comes down to like, okay, we have made a connection. You could be a client. I could be your designer. I'm interviewing you as well. It's both ways, because there are plenty of clients that may want to work with us that just aren't a great fit, and we know it for certain reasons. And we've talked about this recently too, that we actually have like a matrix that we rate potential clients on if they're, we're not 100% sure. Some of this is on gut. A lot of it is on gut. But there are also some things that we can actually think about, like, okay, is this person kind? Is it in the right neighborhood? Is their budget like
Yeah.
we put them through that, and do they hit the minimum? But that took us a while to get to that point. Like when I first started, I said yes to everyone, like just yes. And I wore myself out, which is a trap for new entrepreneurs. So how do you avoid that trap early on? Do you have any like sage advice for that?
Well, my first piece of advice is get a coach as soon as you're even thinking about starting a business, because if you want to save money and save time, like that's the fastest way to do it.
Yep,
Like
agree.
the idea of doing it by ourselves is just silly. Um, but there's an element of believing in you and what you're creating that matters so much. And I'm sure you had lots of self-belief of like, I know I can do this. I know I'm a great designer. I know I can make this look great. But there is often doubt in, will people pay me? Like, who do I think I am to ask this much? Like, I haven't proven myself yet. And we make up these stories when we're first starting a business, even if we've been doing our thing for 20 years, but we've pivoted to our own business. Suddenly we think we're 10 years old again and have no credibility and no access points. And so I think having a strategic partner, whether it's a coach or a mentor or somebody else in this field, to not let you go out the door with prices that are so below your worth and impact is important, because you haven't seen it yet. No one said yes to you at those numbers yet. So you kind of need someone on the other side of the bridge to be like, you don't need to believe it yet. Just put that number out there and see what happens. I'm here. I can prove to you it's worked. I've done it. But like having some of that, I think hand holding helps, because otherwise it's a very long road from, okay, sure, I'll do it for $3,000,
Oh my
$5,000.
gosh, I've done that. And then it just eats your lunch, and it's horrible.
Yes. Yes. And then you think that it would be easier if I just worked for somebody else. And at
Yeah.
that prices, it would.
And then you're back at square one.
What changed for you to step into like what you knew the value was for your services?
Honestly, I got so busy. I hit a pain point where I couldn't take more. And
Yeah.
I was hiring at the same time. So, I always say, like, as entrepreneurs, we often hit a pain point, and that's when we make a decision.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, it was just like there was so much work. I was doing way too much. I didn't have kids at the time. And so I would just, there was no balance. I would just run myself ragged. And so I just hit that pain point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I have to charge more because I can't keep saying yes. Yeah, that's it. It got so painful, I couldn't keep going.
Nothing makes me more excited as a coach than seeing someone so frustrated or angry.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, you're finally going to listen to me. Yes. Because it's like, we get so comfortable and we're like, okay, no, it's working if I just keep doing these same things, even though it's so painful. And even for someone sometimes to take my advice, like they hear it and they're like, oh, that's cute, but that must be for somebody else. And I'm like, no, it's actually for you. But often and sometimes I have to kind of force sometimes those pain points earlier by asking the challenging questions or giving them certain games to play. We're like, no, can't do that anymore for the next week. Just try it on. But there's something about, we have to feel that pain point to finally say, I'm willing to let go of all these bad habits I've had, all these, small thinking I've had. And it's so juicy for me as a coach when someone shows up and they're like, I'm mad. I'm like, yes, we'll finally change things in a big way.
To be willing to pivot now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. The basics on that.
This may lead it. Oh, go ahead, Melissa.
I just want to ask, what are the benefits of working with a coach? I know that there are some interior design business owners out there right now. They're probably experiencing some of these pain points, and they're just like, okay, I hire a coach, but what do I get?
Well, it definitely depends on what type of coach you're working with. There's lots of different kinds. I classify myself as a Thrive-based business coach. I have my Have It All method. I have another one called A Ridiculous and Extraordinary Life. Like, if you want to have it all and figure out ways to make your wildest dreams come true and not lose your mind and have the business still grow, that's the type of coach I am. There are other coaches who are really focused on accountability, who are focused on in-depth systems, who are let's 10x your business coach. I'm not a 10x your business coach because I think that often that leads to a turning point where you're starting to sacrifice yourself and your integrity and the other things that your core values are. But there's like an 86% rate I have of doubling your business year over year by actually focusing on you. But coaches, if you're evaluating a coach for yourself, you want to find someone who definitely shares values with you, which is how I think you should choose all the people in your life. Have someone who's done this with a business like yours, the size of yours, the type of team you have, and also understands your lifestyle components for that balance.
Mm.
If you are a business owner and a mom, you should make sure that you're working with a coach who's worked with parents before. If you are a business owner and your romantic partner is also your business partner, you should pick someone who's worked with couples before, because that's a whole other dynamic. It becomes couples therapy very quickly. And I think it's important for when you're evaluating a coach that they tell you where their limits are. Like, I don't like, where did they really give you a 5-star dazzling impact versus where are they like, I can talk to you about that, but that's not my expertise. So if you want that, here's some other people I can recommend. But a coach should give you access to seeing things in a bigger way, giving you ways to get there faster, helping you get your time back, giving you my 3-part method is clarity, strategy, thrive. And those are 3 things you should be getting from whatever coach you're working with in some capacity.
Mm.
If you want more money, tell them that. Like, you should be investing in a coach is just like investing in marketing. You should know what ROI you want out of that. And I think where a lot of people get stuck, they love the idea of a coach, but they think I don't know, it's like the way we talk about getting like facials or massages in our person. Like, oh, well, when I have extra money, I'll do that. And it's like, you should be wearing sunscreen every day and doing it now and getting the facials now, because there's a long-term impact to it. And so I think people don't think about, okay, if I invest $10,000 into a coach, I should be getting $10,000 back. And I really should be getting way more back than that, because at the end of the day, like, it's $10,000. And if that is a big deal for your business, please call a coach immediately. But whenever you're investing in coaching, you should be getting back in cost savings, in peace of mind, and ideally in additional revenue also.
That,
Did that answer that
yes,
for
that
you?
makes it sound so exciting. We're just like, gosh,
Okay.
do I need a coach now? And I also wanted you have it all, if your method. And I was
Yep.
listening to a reel of yours. I think it was a reel on Instagram, and you were talking about this 20-hour work week. And I have just really railed on how I feel like every entrepreneur that we speak to always works 40 plus and is always working on the weekends
Mhm.
because then they don't have meetings, or like we're working on vacation. And to me, I think that's so draining. And so, can entrepreneurs actually have it all? Can they work 20 hours a week and still have a thriving, successful business?
The short answer is 1000% yes. Part of the have it all method is choosing specifically for you what you want and how you want your life and your business to function. Women in particular, we are so good at taking on everyone else's shoulds and coulds and what ifs and lifestyle choices. And when we really look at what we want, we also tend to judge ourselves really hard. There's a value exercise that I'll do with clients, and they realize that family isn't in their top 5 values. It
Mm.
doesn't mean they don't care about their family, it doesn't mean they don't want a family, but there are 5 things that are going to make them light up on a daily basis differently. So instead of family, it might just be, I need deep connections with people every day. It could be a client, it could be my colleagues, it could be my family, but every day I need a juicy depth of connection. And we really judge ourselves so hard for that. So I think there's also going through the process of realizing where we're like feeling guilty about the life we actually want or what our values actually are, and having to kind of have come to clarity about that for ourselves of if every day I'm learning something new, I'm a happy person, which actually gives me access to spend the quality time with my family that I want.
Mm-hmm.
And we put these priorities in that aren't actually ours. So that's the first thing we have to have a breakthrough on. The second thing is our time. Everyone listening, please stop working more than 40 hours a week. Just immediately. Just stop doing it, because you're not actually growing your business by doing that. Are there unique sprints within a year? Of course. But it should not, if it's the norm, it means that your business is broken. And it is fixable. They all are. But if we're working more than 40 hours a week, it's just like overspending on a budget. It means that we are not putting in time for the things that don't happen all the time, but do happen. It's like when people say, "Oh, I have no money for Christmas." You're like, it happens every year. Like all the time. Like we need time for design and research. We need time for inspiration. We need time to do sales and marketing. And often when we are working more than 40 hours a week, it means that we are going over scope and don't have boundaries in place that we need with our clients. We are not staying in our zone of genius. We don't have the right team around us. And we're living a little bit delusional about how many hours are in a day and over promising things and not putting in buffers. So I have a really simple spreadsheet that I work with on clients about what do you want your week to look like? We're going to start at your week because the small things add up. And
Mm-hmm.
some people that week is the same every week. Some people have an AB week, it rotates. Some people have, like, I've evolved into having like A, B, C, and D weeks because I do a lot of things once a month. And then when you start to make sure everything's in there, and we start with your life. When are you working out? When are you having dinners? When do you wake up? Are you walking the dog every day at 4 o'clock before it gets dark? Like, what life do you want? We build the life first, and we can build any business at any scalability on top of that.
Speaking my language. I love that so much.
I know, love it. And I saw a post. This is, I mean, we could go down this rabbit hole all day. So I saw a post that you just made about doubling your fees.
Yes.
So talk about that, because that's scary. Like that sounds very scary.
So it can be. So if you are at a place where you're charging $5,000 for whatever your initial interior design package is just to make up a number, I know because of the visibility I have that that number is extraordinarily low in the world of interior design. And you don't need to double all your prices overnight. But we have to remember that business is also a game. And like we get to make it up. Our words create things. What is the abracadabra, right? The translation of that in Arabic is like, I create with my words. It's like we are casting spells every day by the words that we choose to say to ourselves and out into the world is what that translation becomes. So the fastest way to become the next tier of what you want to be is to just decide it and try it on.
Yep.
You'll be surprised that if you are on a call with somebody, especially somebody that, like, I tell clients, like, the baby step in is if you're not sure about this client, there may be a B, not an A plus, just give them the double price and see what happens. Because
Yeah.
you're not
What
worried
are
if
you
they walk
losing?
away.
Yeah.
Exactly. And every time I've done this for myself, I kick myself because whatever the new price is that comes out of my mouth, the
They
person
say
who says yes, yeah, they go, "Oh, that's it. This is such a great value." And I'm like, "Damn it. I should have 4x'd it."
Yes,
Like,
should have
where's
quadrupled.
Yeah, so we think about our money story from our perspective, and $10,000 to somebody is a big deal, but $10,000 to Bill Gates is like what he spends on toilet paper. So
Yeah.
it's not even like someone pitching him 10K would feel like it wouldn't be worth anything for him. So we have to remember that too.
And I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion. I think that's great advice. But do you have any unpopular opinions that you would just stand by, like no matter what?
I feel like I probably have so many controversial thoughts. I think the biggest one is that we should be building selfish businesses.
Hmm.
Like, It's our business for our best life. So why are we building it to serve anyone except ourselves? Now, this is because people have a derogatory relationship with the word selfish. And it's usually from women, it's usually from our current cultural perspective, but it's the oxygen mask analogy. Like, you have to make sure that your business works for you. Otherwise, you're not going to want to do it. You're going to start resenting your business. There's a word I've given up as best I can. It still sneaks out once in a while, is deserve. If you start saying, I deserve a vacation, deserve implies that you're resenting what got you to where you are. And I don't want to resent my business. I don't want to resent my clients. Like, I want to really stay in a place of gratitude about all of that. So I've been switching deserve to worth whenever I can. Like, I am worth having vacations. I am worth having dream clients. Because again, do you want to be the hero of the story, or do you want to be the sidekick? And there are too many people choosing sidekick, and it happens in micro moments. It shows up in all the things we're tolerating. And like when clients are canceling appointments that you change your kid's schedule to make happen. It's all these small things. And so, of course, this is again where having a coach helps. You have to decide sometimes, like, I really want to be here. This is where my business is now. How can I make these micro choices to move as quickly as possible into my ideal version? Because when even 90% of your life is working the way you want it to, you're fine working with that 10%. We always, once we have what we want, we always add more on anyway, right? But it's, please be selfish. And you can be heart-led, you can be compassionate, you can be a great leader, you can love your clients and still be selfishly oriented in how your business functions. And a really quick way to see how this shows up for you is how people pay you. Do people pay you on time? Do they pay you the way that's easiest for you? Do they pay you in full? And like how you accept money starts to show real quickly. Are you oriented this around you, or are you making it really easy for them?
Man, Melissa, we have a really selfish business. I'm very proud.
I am also proud of you guys.
It's funny though. As soon as you said that, I'm like, I have guilt. Ugh. That is, yes, it's because women and the culture and, the guilt. I feel it in my stomach. Yep.
Well, even as you start accelerating your business and you start working with more high profile clients and maybe people who are considered celebrities or people who are these multi, 8-9 figure entrepreneurs, we have to check ourselves there too, because we suddenly start to think, oh, they're busy. Oh, I need
my God, it's the worst.
Yes. So
the celebrities are the worst.
Yes. So if you're working with that group of people or you desire to, you really have to stand in what your boundaries are.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there are people who need more flexibility. I have a client
Of
who
course, absolutely,
I break the rules for because they're a mom and we can only talk at this time. And I'm like, nope, I'm on your team. We'll figure it out.
And they're lovely and they are your people. Yes.
Yeah. So just because they have fancy lives doesn't mean that they get to run all over your boundaries and plans.
Yep. All right. So selfish business, like it. Melissa, do you have any last questions? I have one to wrap us up.
Go right ahead.
What else you got?
I think we could be even more selfish, if I'm being honest. Like, I'd like for us to be more selfish.
Oh, well, I mean, if you're down to be more selfish, like, let's talk about that. I'm open. Like a 20-hour work week is kind of, I don't know. I feel like I got there. I get there at certain points of my business.
Yep.
And then I see a shiny object and I screw it up because I'm like, oh, I'm going to go after that now because I have all this extra time. What am I doing? And then I screw it up for myself. But I do agree that 20 hours sounds dreamy. And it's not that I'm not working the other time, but I'm working on things that really light me up. Is that what you mean?
Well, so I love what you're bringing up because there are what we decide are work hours and then what we decide is everything else. And especially when we love the work we do, like our whole lives get embedded into it. Like
That's right. Yeah.
and that's good. Like that just means you're doing something that you really enjoy. So I kind of hate the phrase work-life balance
Yeah, we do
because
too.
it's like saying spring seasonal balance. And you're like, what? Like it's just work is part of life. Like, what
Yeah.
are we talking about? So I think we just have to be really honest with ourselves about how do we want to spend our time in general. And if you're a creative person and you're going to fall into the museums and the design books and what are other people doing? Like inspiration is never stopping for most people. So it only becomes a problem to have creep in those areas when your family's like, you've been on Pinterest for 12 hours. Would you like to come out of the hole? Or, it's that part. But so there's parts of our that go into our business that we love doing that we just need to make sure that it's not taking over from another part that we also need.
Yeah.
If we're doing inspiration, not going to the gym, not having family dinners, whatever else are our values, that's when it becomes an issue.
Mm.
But often working the 20 hours a week, people who get there, they all add either a new business arm, a new business,
Yep.
a new project. But it speaks to the fact that there is an ever evolving level of efficiency. This is why I love the 40-hour or 4-hour work week book.
Yep. I read that a long time ago and I was like,
Yeah.
that's a pipe dream. What?
Yeah. But if you can
It's
build
about
your
efficiency.
business,
Yeah.
it's about efficiencies and being really bold about it. But when you get to a 20-hour work week, you have this power to choose. If you choose to go back to 30 because you want to, great. If you say, I don't know what to do with my time now, but I'm going to add more things into my working hours that aren't client facing, great. I think in general, 20 hours a week should be the maximum for client facing hours for any
Well,
entrepreneur.
I mean, my God, absolutely. That's not,
Yeah.
I don't do that much client facing now.
Good.
Because honestly, but I did early in my career, I was
Mhm.
60 hours client or whatever it was. And now it's mostly like internal team meetings.
Mhm.
I would count that as 20 hours. And then some client facing, yes, just because we've gotten really busy and we're understaffed. It's like that constant balance. So then I become
Yeah.
the client facing person. It's
Oh,
interesting though.
can I give you a tip about that?
Yes.
This is another thing. Okay, so one of my rules is as the owner or leadership team in a company, you are never allowed to replace people below you.
Damn, that's hard.
I know. But it's like, so if someone's on vacation, you are not the one replacing them. If somebody is taking maternity leave, you are not the one replacing them. If someone's gone for a while, you're not. And so there are a lot of different ways to, one, have them handle things before they're out. But if they're truly a missing hire, how can the workload be shared by the people who are more their peers or a consultant in the short term?
Mm.
Because every time you go down in your business, that's when we fall into bad habits.
Yeah.
So if you're going to work more than 20 hours, how do we kind of keep that? Instead of a ceiling, you build a floor for yourself. And often people have guilt around this because I can jump in, I can do it, I know how. And I'm like, you can, but every time you're not CEOing or not being the leader, we're missing opportunities. We're missing the next interesting thing. So, how can you build a floor for yourself that you don't go backwards in? It's really hard.
God, yes. Okay. We're working on this. I am working on this, but yes, it is hard.
Yeah.
Especially when we are down a very senior person. Like that's when it becomes
Yes.
difficult because there's only a couple of people that can do that job. It's very hard to hire for, which Melissa and I have found
Yeah.
over the last 6 months of trying to hire for this position. Anywho, I digress. So let's wrap this up because we could talk about this all day for sure. But I have just to close this out. If you had to prioritize one thing this year, and this may just be ongoing, but would it be freedom of time, freedom of finance, or freedom of location?
I would say freedom of time. Um, there's a lot more options that people think to work from anywhere. Like it's really a lot easier than we make it out to be. Freedom of finances, you can always be making more money. And I think there's also a conversation around what is enough for people,
Yep.
because we can always add more, but why and for what end goal?
Oh,
But we don't get time back, and time does need to be treated more like money than we currently think of it. So if you had freedom of time in 2025, you could even play the game of once a month, I'm going on a small trip somewhere. I'm going to see a friend I normally wouldn't see. You're going to get 12 experiences that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And if it's on a more micro level, if you're like, I'm closing doors at 4 o'clock every day, you just gave yourself 365 evenings back with your family. And even if there was half of those, that's time that you don't get back. So choose freedom of time until there's the tipping point of where like, no, I need to eat still, but there's lots of room between choosing time and still making double the revenue that you had previously.
yeah. Freedom of time for me is ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm.
Choosing how to spend every moment.
And that's the key word, right? Like entrepreneurship is about choice.
Yes.
So
Choice.
if nothing else, the selfish way to start is, am I getting to choose and each of these things, or do I feel like I'm stuck somewhere? So
Mm-hmm. Wow, this is very insightful. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is great. Let's talk again soon for sure.
Yeah, no, I'd love to have you guys on the Powerful Ladies podcast, but this has been great. Like, it's so great to have examples like you guys that are already, walking this talk and can be examples for other people.
Trying our best.
Yeah. But thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. It was so refreshing to just hear freedom and openness, and not like the starvation and the scarcity, and often like the sports language that we often hear of just like harder, stronger, faster, more. And I was just like, no, I want to do a lot less and still make more money.
For what? Totally.
Yeah.
Do that.
And women entrepreneurs, when we look at VC funding, they get 2%, which is atrocious, but they're always getting better returns because we have to. Like, we show up and we have this whole kaleidoscope of what our life and our values and our hobbies and everything is. And so there's so much power, to your point, Liz, of what does this soft power look like and how do we have it all? Because we're already juggling 80 million things. So let's juggle well.
Yep. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
And if our listeners want to find you, where are they looking?
They can go to karaduffy.com, and then also on Instagram, Kara_Duffy, and it's Kara with a K.
Awesome. All right, perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our next podcast, coming live next week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, you can find us and more wonderful stories like these on designdash.com. And make sure to follow us at Design Dasher on Instagram and TikTok. Till next time.